and 1 mile means the measurement made from the well bore in a straight line without regard to intervening structures or objects to the property line of nearest residence. And restrictions, geothermal resources, exploration drilling, and geothermal production drilling operations being conducted 1 mile or less from a residence shall be restricted to the operating hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This was introduced by Mr. Yagong. Communication 825.51 from Councilmember Donald Ikeda dated October 19, 2012, transmitting a proposed amendment to Bill 292. Adds a new section to Chapter 14 as follows. Section 14, exceptions. Restrictions of this article shall not be interpreted or construed to deprive rights of a geothermal developer to conduct drilling operations which vested prior to the implementation of this article.
Wait a minute, there's a pending motion by Mr. Pilar to approve Bill 292, and there's a communication for amendment. Maybe we should start with that. Mr. Ikeda, your amendment, did you want to make an amendment?
Yes, I'd like to amend Bill 292 with the contents of Communication 825.51.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Yoshimoto. Mr. Ikeda, you have the floor.
Yes, this amendment is to clarify that Puna Geothermal do have vested rights up to their requirements on their permit, and I don't think that we can legally take it away. So with that,
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford, do you have the floor? This is on the amendment.
Yes, sir. I'm going to speak against this amendment. The rights that are granted by the current permit are vested, and and that's just the way it is. We don't need to have a superfluous law to protect rights that already exist legally. So I think this is a superfluous amendment, and I will not be supporting it.
1 second, Mr. Ikeda. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the amendment? Go ahead, Mr. Yoshimoto.
On the amendment, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This amendment basically clarifies at least what we've been advised, that is the effect of the bill. So in that sense, it might seem redundant, but it makes it clear so that the public understands what it can and cannot do. So in that sense, I think it adds clarification. So I think it would be good, but I'd like to hear from other council members as well. Thank you.
If you don't mind, Mr. Ikeda, I'll go to Ms. Onishi. Go ahead, Ms. Onishi.
And council members, before we start communication 825.61, my staff did go and do a survey in Pohoa. Okay, they went to Walama Market, Long Strugs, Island Naturals, and along the main street to Orchid Land. They they surveyed 143 people. 45 of them felt that Bill 292, if it's passed, that PGV wouldn't be able to drill from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Okay, 12 people said no, so they understood what the bill was about. 86 had no opinion or wasn't familiar with the bill. Okay, so with this amendment, it's gonna help out these 45 people who said yes, that the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. would be in effect if we pass this bill, Bill 292. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ikeda, on the motion.
yes, what happened is when we went to the public hearing, the comments that I heard was that if we pass the bill as stated, then we can stop the Puna Geothermal from drilling from 7 to 7. And I try to clarify that it's not true, but somehow you're going to believe what you feel. And I just want to make it very clear that they are allowed to continue drilling until we reach their permitted use. Thank you.
Folks, mind if I speak to the amendment at this time, or Mr. Hoffman, did you want to speak?
Yes, I do, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
go ahead,
Go
sir.
ahead, you go first.
Okay. Thank you, council members. First of all, let me just say that, you know what, and I've said this at the previous hearing. As far as I'm concerned, the permit that the PVG has, whatever the details of that permit, obviously, it's something that we cannot retroactive, an ordinance. And those of us that was in executive session, heard that, from our corporation counsel. And so it's not the intent for the bill to try to retroactive and try to say from here on out, you cannot drill. But here's the problem as I see it with this particular amendment. As I mentioned today, Jay Ignacio, the president for Helco, did call my office just to give me a heads up that they are, and we've heard about this for a long time, this additional 50 megawatts of the RFP that they're going on for another 50 megawatts. Now, the contention of PBG has been that the permit that we have allows us to build up to 60 megawatts. At this point in time, they're at 38 megawatts. So that allows what, another 22 megawatts? Is my math correct?
Yeah.
Another 22 megawatts. So that's why this is very concerning to me, because you know, anything that they were entitled to their previous permit that was issued by DLNR and the Planning Commission, I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to mess with that. But like in any other competitor that wants to come in, you know, when we apply a law, it has to be kind of fair across the board. So if PVG gets gets the RFP for 50 megawatts, you're only allowed 22 megawatts. That becomes a new drilling permit. You see, so that's why when you put something like this in here, now you've really clouded the waters here. Because we're okay, I mean, we've said it over and over that we don't expect it to affect the existing permit. That's cool. But folks, if it's an additional permit that PVG comes out for, or IDG, which is, I only mention them because they have come to the council and say they're interested in drilling as well, or if there's any other company, what this bill does is it's not restricted to PGV. You know, so, does it not become a new contract if it's above the 60 megawatts that they were allowed to do under the existing contract? It would be. So that's why, we're gonna really cloud the, now if they wanna go up to 22 megawatts, it would seem to me that they have the right to do so, and maybe the community might not agree with it, but still they have the permitted right to do so. I'm not gonna try to take that away. But you go 1 megawatt above that, I'm sorry, it's a new permit. So that's why, I mean, unless PVG is not intending to bid for the RFP for the 50 megawatt. I don't think so. I think they probably are interested in that. So that's why for me, I'm concerned about this, especially when we've already ascertained, and the maker of this bill has also, come forward and says, we're not going to affect whatever rights that they're entitled to in the existing contract. This muddies the water, so I'll be voting against the amendment. Any further discussion?
Mr.
Okay,
Hoffman
go ahead.
first. Mr. Hoffman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yagong. I see this in the light, similar light to what you were just explaining. On face value, I don't have too much of a problem. It could be perhaps refined, the amendment could be refined a little bit in order to include the points you're making. But Mr. Yoshimoto made the point, I thought Corp Counsel made the point many times before, that this type of language simply is restating the obvious fact that's already there. I don't see that it's part, or it needs to be at all part of this particular bill, regardless of whether it's in there or not. Half the people down in Puna are still going to think that PGV can't drill between 7 in the evening and 7 in the morning. I mean, regardless of what's passed. So I think this is superfluous. I don't necessarily see that we have to, as you say, muddy the waters, or rather, I don't see the need to include this. Please, let's move ahead and let's not debate this particular bill any further. Thank you.
Mr. Rishi, you have the floor.
I must disagree with that. I mean, to me, we just voted it and we just amended it. And so that's it. I mean, it's not like gonna hurt anybody. And like I said, as I mentioned earlier, my staff did go, and out of 143 people, 45 people thought that because we passed 292, that PGV will be restricted, okay? And so by just putting this in, it's just to clarify better into the bill. And so I don't see no harm about it. I don't see why we can't just vote for it. Because if, like Chairman, you mentioned before, it's already stated, so that's okay. I mean, what's the harm about it? Right? Thank you.
I'll answer that if you like.
What's the harm?
Yeah, to me, the harm is this here. especially with the announcement by Helco today, knowing that they only have 22 megawatts. I think it'll bring harm to PGV, quite frankly, because if I was another geothermal company, and I would now have to abide by the 12-hour restriction, it will provide a tremendous advantage to PVG if they don't have to abide by the same rules. We're only opening ourselves up, and I think even PVG for even being disqualified from even. It's not like I'm trying to say that they should go for the RFP, but I gotta tell you right now, we passed this, and the next thing that we're gonna have to deal with is another geothermal saying that we're providing an unfair advantage to PGV. Now, it's not gonna be unfair for them to deal with whatever they're entitled with the existing contract. That's cool. But if we mess with anything that might, because it would be going, if they were to win the 50 megawatt contract RFP, can you imagine being another, and then they say that they do not have to abide by this ordinance? Oy, yikes. Talk about, a big problem. So, anyway, I'm just trying to answer Mr. Onishi's question. Go ahead, Mr. We're still on the amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Akira.
Mr. Ye, will you please come up and I want you to read this and I want your interpretation. Because I disagree with the chairman because that's not what I heard at the meeting. Do you have a copy of this amendment? I really disagree with the chairman.
It's okay. It's not the first time.
That's correct. I just wanted to make it very clear that Puna Geothermal has up to 60 megawatts. And that's all I propose. Anything after that, then what if you want to go from 7 to 7, you cannot do it from 7 to 7. That's another story. But in the meantime, we're on the amendment, so I'll talk about something else later. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thank you, sir.
Well, if you
Just for the record, introduce yourself.
Yes, Thomas Ye, attorney for BGD. In essence, the way the bill reads now is it is a blanket prohibition. And so the problem there is that someone from the public who doesn't understand what this bill is intended to cover or not cover, it actually does muddy the water because someone could say, hey, PGV, you're in violation of this ordinance. And so all that this amendment does do is say that it does not deprive the rights of a geothermal developer to conduct drilling operations which vested prior to the effective date of this ordinance. So all it does in fact do is cover those rights that PGV has under the GRP and under the DLNR permit, which the council is certainly aware of. So rather than muddy the water, it actually clears it up and clarifies what those rights are. So that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, again, see, the problem is with your bill, it says restrictions, right? And it says from 7 a.m.
Might as well.
Well, okay, I should wait then.
Okay.
But that's why the amendment, but kind of talking about the amendment, that's why we need to put it in.
Mr. You since you're there,
Yes.
can I ask, I'll ask the question. You have 22 megawatts left in the existing contract, existing permit.
Yes.
Elco is gonna come out with a 50, request for proposal for 50 megawatts. If you are to get a contract for 50 megawatts above and beyond what you're allocated under the existing permit, would it then not be another permit that you would have to secure? Because you're only allowed up to 60.
That's correct. So depending on what regulatory jurisdiction and requirements there are in place at the time that development occurs, then yes, it would depend on that. So for instance, DLNR issued a permit also for the 60 megawatts and I think a 24 well field to accomplish that. So in order to increase that, yes, we would have to go back to the Board of Land and Natural
Okay.
Resources and perhaps the county, depending on the
Because
legislation.
the question I had is, okay, so the ordinance is passed, say you do get the 50 megawatts, sorry, other geothermal, I'm not saying that these guys are gonna
Yes,
get it.
that's
Let's see if they do get it. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna say, well, we'll drill until we have the capacity for 22 megawatts, and we'll do that 24 hours a day. However, at the 23rd megawatt, then at that point, we will have to abide by the, I mean, how would you folks handle that?
Well, I think it's very difficult to speculate how that would come out because the RFP is still in the draft form. How one or more energy producers will be able to satisfy 50 megawatts, whether PGV is even going to be interested because part of it is calling for what they call dispatchable power, which means that Helco doesn't take that 50 megawatts 24/7. That then begs the question as to whether or not it's economically feasible to make a bid to do that. So there are a lot of questions in the future, but all we're talking about right now is whether or not this amendment is appropriate for what's going on currently. And let me just say beyond that is that the other bigger question obviously.
We're just on the amendment on here, so we can get to that on main motion. But, you know, I just wanna say, I mean, I think we're about ready to vote on the amendment, is that I think that if we were to pass this amendment, I think it would be giving PGV the vested right to not only go up to 60 megawatt, but whatever is beyond that. And to me, that is gonna create an unfair advantage to every, and that's where you wanna talk about getting to some litigation issues. So I think, you know, this bill left as is would be better, not only for us, but I think for the industry as whole, because it doesn't favor one person over the other in terms of having a level playing field.
May I speak to that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll give
Go ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Onishi the floor.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's quite a correct assessment because all this amendment does is say rights which vested as of the date of this article. The only rights which are vested is the 60 megawatts. That's all.
But then also, can I get core counsel to come up here?
Council? Mr. Brillante? I'm gonna say Mr. Takasi, but you have a different hat now, Mr. Takasi.
I was looking for Kathy, but she's not there, so sorry. Couldn't introduce yourself.
Good evening, William Burhanti, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
Thank you for coming forward. No, why I brought you up is because of, to my understanding, is like, with this amendment, it's just gonna give PGV what they have now, up to 60 megawatts that they are allowed. I mean, just for the public's sake, to let them know that they have, you know, they can drill 24/7, okay? Anything later on, whatever RFPs or whatever they get, or they win, or whoever, then they have to follow this ordinance if it's passed. Okay, that from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. they cannot drill. I mean, is that what their interpretation is?
You know,
Won't they have to go to like Windward, the planning commission and so forth to?
I think, you know, as we discussed this issue previously, when you called me up previously, we did have the issue as to, you know, when you're asking me for legal advice as it relates to what current entitlements PVG has, to me the responses that we give may adversely, or it may not adversely impact the current permit holder, PVG. And I'm very uncomfortable providing legal advice on the record. So if you're gonna pose that question to me, I'm gonna have to request that we move into executive session before I can provide a response. I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the question, the answer, I'm just saying that's my opinion.
One more thing, which is, you know, what the discussion that Chairman Yagong has posed relates to the 50 megawatt RFP that's out there, but, you know, there are, for example, PGV has done incremental power purchase agreements, the last one being 8 megawatts, the one before that 5 megawatts, so again, it's not necessarily 50 megawatt that we're looking into, necessarily looking into the future, so it is speculative at this point.
Mr. Vilhanti, what about this question? Okay, that what Mr. Yagong mentioned is that, okay, there's an RFP Health was putting on for 50 megawatts, right? Now, would you consider that like,
Excuse me, you know, I am getting really uncomfortable with this discussion on,
Corp counsel.
with Corp Council, and not that you're doing anything wrong,
oh, well,
but also the 50 megawatt RFP. I really think we're in very shaky ground, and that, I'm just uncomfortable. I don't know how Mr. Bilhaji
okay,
feels.
well, if there's a new contract that comes out, okay, if this ordinance is passed, wouldn't whatever company be required to follow the 7 PM to 7 AM? Any new development?
My position is that, under the current contract, under the current permit, PVG is permitted to produce 60 megawatts of geothermal, power, and any, you know, anything outside of that, any loss of that right could be, a potential harmful effect on PVG. And before I say any more, I think you were all present when we had the discussion in executive session, and I know what I'm aware of. I'm confident that you know what I'm alluding to, and without stating that, you know, out here in public session, again, I'm gonna have to reaffirm my desire to move into executive session to appropriately answer that question. And, you know, I'm not just trying to give you, you know, Mr. Onishi, I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm just concerned that there may be some potential liability attached to the
So
answer.
even if there's anything new?
If there's a new permit,
Right, like a new permit, that's what I'm saying, anything new, a new permit.
okay, outside the fact whether or not PVG has a permit or not, if there's a new application,
Right.
the DLNR rules are clear that all new applications have to comply with federal, state, and county, rules and regulations.
So that's why I said, so if this is passed, this ordinance, the one from you cannot drill from 7 PM to 7 AM,
Excuse me, we're on the amendment.
but that would be,
Hang on, no, hang on, I'll let Mr. Nishi finish, and we'll move off that. Go ahead, Mr. Nishi.
I mean, right, that, so if this ordinance passed, the new applicant would have to follow the hours of drilling, correct?
I can't speak for what the requirements that DLNR will put in place, but I, you know, because there's two permits that are required to be obtained for the process. There's a DLNR drilling permit, and then there's a permit through the planning commission. I only can answer to what the planning commission can impose, and that would be that the applicant would have to comply with current county regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're still on the amendment. We're gonna go to Mr. Mr. Ikeda. I'm so sorry. It is 6:20 in the evening, and then we're gonna take the vote on the amendment. Mr. Ikeda, go ahead, sir.
You know, I was just trying to, I was gonna read the exceptions, and it says, to construct with the deprived rights of a geothermal developer to conduct drilling operations which vested prior to the implementation of this article. So in other words, whatever rights they have, they are able to keep. And that's all we're trying to say. We're not talking about, all we're talking about is Puno geothermal up to their 60 megawatts, nothing beyond, and this is all, I believe, this amendment is stating. And I just wanted to make it clear because, like I said, when we went to the hearing in Puno, I heard just the opposite. So I just wanted to make it clear so there is no mistake on what we're voting on.
The motion on the floor is to approve the amendment as contained in Mr. Ikeda's communication. Madam Clerk, please, on the amendment.
Ms. Gordon.
No.
Mr. Hoffman.
No?
Mr. Ikeda.
Aye.
Mr. Onishi.
Aye.
Mr. Pilato.
No.
Ms. Smart.
No.
Mr. Yoshimoto.
Aye.
Chair Yugang.
No.
Chair Yugang, you have 3 ayes.
Okay, so we are at the main motion. Discussion on the main motion. See,
Something else, okay, you know, I gotta bring up why I did the survey again and to let council members know, I don't know why you folks had to vote no against it, but like I said, 143 people were surveyed, 45 said yes, that they feel that if Bill 292 passes, that Puno Geothermal are not gonna be allowed to drill from 7 PM to 7 AM. Okay, 12 said no, but 86 had no opinion or wasn't familiar with the bill, okay? But this thing was just to try to help the 45 people to understand what this bill is all about. So, it's up to you guys, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we are going to be voting on the main motion, Bill 292. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Ikeda?
Excused?
Mr. Onishi?
No.
Mr. Calabro?
Aye.
Ms. Smart? Aye. Ms. Yoshimoto?
No?
Chair Yuan?
Aye.
Chair Yuan, you have 5 ayes.
Okay, Bill 292 passes. Okay, Madam Clerk, let's go to, I've been asked for a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you.